Montana Territory, spring 1876. Owen Zachariah had learned three truths in his 25 years on this earth. Fire destroys everything, trust gets a man killed, and love was a fool's game best left to those who had never watched their family burn. He stood now in the gray dawn light outside Thornton Creek, watching smoke curl from the chimney of the general store, and felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the one that came whenever he smelled wood smoke, the one that reminded him he was meant to ride alone. The town was waking up around him, but Owen kept his distance, his hand resting on the pommel of his saddle as his bay gelding shifted beneath him. He wore his hat low, his clean-shaven jaw set in a hard line that made him look older than his years. His shoulders were broad from years of ranch work, his frame athletic and strong, but there was a wariness in his blue eyes that spoke of wounds that went deeper than flesh. He had come to Thornton Creek for supplies, nothing more. In 3 days he would move on to the next ranch, the next temporary job. That was how Owen lived, never staying long enough to put down roots, never letting anyone close enough to matter. It was safer that way. The frontier had taught him that attachment only led to ash and grief. The false belief that had shaped his world was simple. A man survived alone or not at all. Love was a weakness, connection a trap. He had watched his parents die in the fire that consumed their homestead when he was 15, had heard his mother's screams as the flames took her. He had been too late, too weak, too helpless. Never again would he let himself care enough to feel that kind of pain. What Owen thought he wanted was simple: to make enough money to buy a small piece of land far from everyone, to live out his days in solitude where loss could never touch him again. What he actually needed, though he would never admit it, was to learn that hearts could heal, that the frontier could be tamed not just by solitude but by the courage to let someone in. The scream that split the morning air changed everything. Owen's head snapped toward the boarding house at the end of the street, where orange flames were already licking through the second-story windows. People were running, shouting, but Owen was already moving, his heels driving into his horse's flanks. The animal surged forward, racing toward the burning building even as every instinct Owen possessed screamed at him to turn away, to not look, to not remember. But there was another scream, high and terrified, and Owen saw her, a young woman in a white nightgown, her long blonde hair streaming behind her as she appeared at the window, smoke billowing around her. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, her face pale with terror, her hands pressed against the glass. Owen did not think. He drove his horse right up to the building, stood up in his stirrups, and reached for the porch overhang. His hands caught the edge, and he hauled himself up, ignoring the heat that was already beginning to radiate through the wood. The shingles were hot beneath his boots as he scrambled up to the window where the woman stood trapped. "Break the glass," he shouted. She stared at him, frozen with fear, and Owen did not wait. He pulled off his hat, wrapped it around his fist, and punched through the window. Glass shattered, and he cleared the frame quickly before reaching for her. "Come on, we do not have time." The woman looked back over her shoulder, and Owen saw the flames reflected in her wide green eyes. The fire was in the room now, consuming the doorway, and black smoke was filling the space. She made her decision, climbing through the window into his arms. Owen caught her, feeling her weight settle against him, and for one moment time seemed to stop. Even with soot on her face and terror in her eyes, she was beautiful, delicate features, blonde hair that caught the morning light, lips parted in a gasp. Then the roof groaned ominously, and Owen shook himself back to action. "Hold on to me," he ordered, wrapping one arm around her waist. She clutched at his shoulders, and Owen lowered them both down to the porch overhang, then jumped to the ground, keeping her sheltered in his arms. They landed hard, and Owen rolled to take the impact, ending up on his back with the woman sprawled across his chest. She was coughing, gasping for air, and he helped her sit up, his hands steadying her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. She shook her head, still coughing, and then the boarding house groaned and a section of the roof caved in with a shower of sparks. The crowd that had gathered gasped and stepped back, but the woman in Owen's arms went rigid, her eyes fixed on the flames. "My aunt," she whispered. "My aunt is in there." Owen's stomach dropped. "Where?" "First floor back room." The woman tried to stand, but Owen was already moving, gently setting her aside and running toward the building before he could think better of it. The front door was engulfed, but there was a side entrance that led to the kitchen. Owen kicked it open, ducking low beneath the smoke. The heat was incredible, pressing against him like a living thing, and the memories threatened to swallow him whole. His mother's voice, the roar of flames, the smell of burning wood, and something worse. But there was a woman's voice calling weakly from somewhere in the smoke, and Owen pushed forward. He found her in a small room off the kitchen, an older woman in her 50s, collapsed near the bed. Owen scooped her up, noting how light she was, how her breathing was labored and shallow. Getting out was harder than getting in. The smoke was thicker now, and Owen could barely see, could barely breathe. He kept one hand on the wall, following it back toward the kitchen, toward the door that led to air and light and life. His lungs burned, his eyes streamed, and for a moment he thought he would not make it, that this would be how he died, in fire, just like he had always feared. Then he was through the door, stumbling out into the morning air, and hands were reaching for him, taking the older woman, helping him to his knees. Someone brought water, and Owen drank gratefully, coughing and gasping. The young woman was there, kneeling beside her aunt, tears streaming down her face as the older woman opened her eyes and started coughing. They would both live. Owen had saved them. He should have felt satisfied. Instead, he felt exposed, raw, as if the fire had burned away some protective layer he had built around himself. When the blonde woman looked up at him, her green eyes full of gratitude and something else, something that made his chest tighten in a different way, Owen knew he should have run. Should have climbed on his horse and ridden away before this moment could take root, but he did not. He stayed on his knees in the dirt, watching her tend to her aunt, and felt the first crack form in the wall he had built around his heart. The woman's name was Olivia Ruth, and she was 22 years old. Owen learned this later, after the doctor had examined both women and declared them miraculously unharmed, after the boarding house had burned to its foundation and the town had gathered to discuss what was to be done. Olivia sat on a bench outside the general store, wrapped in a borrowed shawl, her blonde hair now braided and hanging over one shoulder. The soot had been washed from her face, revealing skin like cream and roses, a small nose, and those remarkable green eyes that seemed to look right through him. "You saved our lives," she said when Owen approached. He had meant to check on them and then leave, to get his supplies and ride out before the sun reached its zenith, but something kept him there, standing awkwardly with his hat in his hands. "Anyone would have done the same," he said. "But you did it," she stood, and he realized she was tall for a woman, the top of her head reaching his shoulder. "I do not even know your name." "Owen Zachariah." Olivia Ruth, she held out her hand and Owen took it, feeling the softness of her skin against his calloused palm. "This is my Aunt Martha Ruth." The older woman sat behind Olivia, still looking pale but recovering. She nodded to Owen with tears in her eyes. "Thank you does not seem sufficient, Mr. Zachariah. You risked your life for us." Owen shifted uncomfortably. "I am glad you are both well. Do you have somewhere to stay?" The question made Olivia's face fall. We had just arrived in Thornton Creek 2 days ago. The boarding house was temporary while we looked for a home to rent. Aunt Martha and I came from Philadelphia after my parents died last winter. They left us a small inheritance, enough to start over somewhere new. She looked at the smoking ruins of the boarding house. All of our belongings were in there, everything except the nightgown I was wearing and the money I had hidden in my shoe. The practical part of Owen's mind began calculating. 2 women alone, no family, limited resources. The frontier was not kind to those without protection, but that was not his problem. He had learned not to make other people's troubles his own, yet he heard himself saying, "The owner of the Double Bar Ranch where I work is a widow named Catherine Morris. She might have a place for you to stay, at least temporarily. She has a large house and sometimes takes in boarders." Olivia's face brightened. "Would you introduce us? We would be so grateful." Owen hesitated. Bringing them to the ranch meant seeing them again, meant extending this connection beyond a single morning. Every instinct told him to walk away, to leave them to find their own way. But Aunt Martha was looking at him with such hope, and Olivia's hand had come to rest on his arm, light as a butterfly, and Owen found himself nodding. "I will take you there this afternoon. Wait here while I get my horse and a wagon." As he walked away, Owen told himself this was just common decency, that any man would do the same. But the warmth of Olivia's hand on his arm lingered, and the grateful smile she had given him seemed to have lodged somewhere in his chest, making it hard to breathe in a way that had nothing to do with smoke. The ride to the Double Bar Ranch took 2 hours. Owen sat up front in the borrowed wagon, driving the team while Olivia and Martha sat in the back on a pile of borrowed blankets. He could hear them talking quietly, discussing their plans, their hopes for the future in Montana territory. "I want to open a dress shop eventually," Olivia was saying. "I was apprenticed to a seamstress in Philadelphia. I am quite skilled with a needle." We will need to establish ourselves first, Martha replied. Find steady work, save money, but yes, dear, I think that would be wonderful. Owen tried not to listen, tried to focus on the road ahead, but their voices wrapped around him like a spell. Olivia's voice was musical, warm, full of optimism that seemed entirely unsuited to the harsh realities of frontier life. She had nearly died that morning, lost everything she owned, and yet here she was planning for the future as if the world was full of promise rather than danger. It contradicted everything Owen believed about survival, about keeping yourself protected from pain. How could she be so open, so trusting, after what she had been through? When they arrived at the double bar, Catherine Morris came out to meet them. She was a woman in her late 40s, with steel gray hair and a no-nonsense manner that had kept the ranch running smoothly since her husband's death 5 years ago. Owen had been working for her for 3 months, and she was one of the few people he almost trusted. "What have you brought me, Owen?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Owen explained the situation, and Catherine's stern expression softened. "Of course you can stay here. I have 2 spare rooms in the house, and Lord knows I could use help with the cooking and cleaning. These cowboys eat like locusts." She gestured at the bunkhouse, where several ranch hands were emerging for the midday meal. "We would be happy to earn our keep," Olivia said quickly. "I can cook and clean, and I am good with mending. Aunt Martha keeps excellent accounts." "Then we have an arrangement," Catherine smiled. "Come inside and get settled. You have had a terrible morning." As the women headed toward the house, Catherine caught Owen's arm. "That was good of you, bringing them here. The frontier needs more men like you." Owen shook his head. "I just did what needed doing." "That is exactly what I mean." Catherine studied him with sharp eyes. "You have been here 3 months, Owen, and I still do not know anything about you except that you are the hardest worker I have ever hired, and you do not talk much. But I know a good heart when I see one, even if the man tries to hide it." Owen had no answer for that, so he tipped his hat and headed back to the wagon. He needed to return it to town, and then he had work to do. The afternoon stretched ahead, full of familiar tasks, mending fences, checking cattle, anything to keep his hands busy and his mind from wandering to green eyes and blonde hair, and a woman who smiled despite having every reason not to. But that night, when Owen returned to the ranch for supper, he found the entire atmosphere of the double bar had changed. The house smelled of fresh bread and roasted chicken, and when he entered the dining room with the other hands, Olivia was there, serving food with a bright smile. She had changed into a borrowed dress, simple blue calico that brought out the color of her eyes, and her hair was pinned up in a soft style that left little curls framing her face. She looked beautiful and entirely too comfortable, as if she belonged here, and Owen felt that dangerous crack in his heart widen just a little more. "Mr. Zachariah," she said warmly when she saw him, "please sit down. You must be exhausted after such a long day." The other cowboys were staring at her with obvious admiration, and Owen felt a strange, unwelcome surge of protectiveness. He took a seat at the end of the table, as far from everyone as he could manage, but Olivia brought his plate herself, setting it before him with another one of those devastating smiles. "I hope you like chicken," she said. "It is my mother's recipe." "I am sure it is fine," Owen managed. She lingered beside him, and he could smell lavender. Someone must have given her soap. "I did not get a chance to properly thank you earlier. You saved my life, Mr. Zachariah, and my aunt's life. I will never forget that." "Just Owen is fine, and like I said, anyone would have done it." "But you did do it." She placed her hand on his shoulder just for a moment, but Owen felt the touch like a brand. "That makes you a hero, whether you want to admit it or not." She moved away then to serve the other men, and Owen focused on his food, trying to ignore the way every person at the table kept glancing between him and Olivia with knowing looks. He did not want this, did not want the attention, the connection, the way she made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he was worth something more than the solitary existence he had carved out for himself. After supper, Owen retreated to the barn, claiming he needed to check on one of the horses. In truth, he just needed space, air, distance from Olivia's presence that seemed to fill every room she entered. He was brushing down his gelding when he heard footsteps behind him. Hiding, Olivia's voice was gentle, teasing. Owen did not turn around, working. "That horse looks plenty groomed to me." She came to stand beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her even in the cool barn air. "Did I do something to offend you, Owen?" "You seemed upset at dinner." No, he forced himself to look at her, to meet those searching green eyes. You did nothing wrong. Then why do you look at me like I am something dangerous? Because you are, he wanted to say. Because you make me want things I cannot have, because you are already working your way past my defenses, and I do not know how to stop you. Instead, he said, I am not good with people. I prefer to keep to myself. Why? She tilted her head, genuinely curious. You are clearly a good man, Owen. You saved two strangers from a fire without hesitation. You brought us to safety, found us shelter. Those are not the actions of someone who does not care about people. Caring gets you killed on the frontier, Owen said, the words coming out harsher than he intended. Or worse, it gets the people you care about killed. It is better not to start. There was a long silence. Then Olivia said quietly, someone hurt you, made you think you are better off alone. Someone died, Owen set down the brush, his hands clenching at his sides. My parents. Our homestead caught fire when I was 15. I tried to save them, but I was too late. I watched them burn, listened to my mother scream. I have been on my own ever since, and I prefer it that way. He expected pity, or worse, that look people got when they decided someone was damaged beyond repair. But Olivia just stepped closer, her expression full of compassion but also something stronger, understanding, maybe, or determination. My parents died too, she said softly. Last winter, influenza, first my father, then my mother 3 days later. I held my mother's hand while she died, and the last thing she said to me was, do not stop living, Olivia. Do not let grief make you hard. I am trying to honor that, to stay soft even when the world is cruel. Owen stared at her, something shifting in his chest. How do you stay that way when you know how much it hurts to lose someone? Because the alternative is worse. She reached out, her hand hovering near his arm but not quite touching, giving him the choice. Being alone might feel safer, but it is not living. It is just existing. And I think you are tired of just existing, Owen. I think that is why you ran into a burning building this morning. Not because you are a hero, but because you are tired of being numb. Her words hit too close to home, cutting through his defenses with surgical precision. Owen took a step back, shaking his head. You do not know me. Not yet, Olivia agreed, but I would like to. Before Owen could respond, one of the ranch hands called from outside. Owen, Catherine needs you at the house. Something about a broken fence near the creek. Owen grabbed his hat, grateful for the interruption. As he brushed past Olivia, she caught his hand just for a second, her fingers warm against his. Think about what I said, she whispered. He pulled away and strode out of the barn, but her touch lingered on his skin, and her words echoed in his mind all through the evening. By the time he fell into his bunk that night, exhausted from a day that had started before dawn, Owen knew something had changed. The wall around his heart had not just cracked, it had developed a hole, and through it, golden-haired Olivia Ruth was beginning to pour in like light. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of work and stolen glances. Owen tried to maintain his distance, but it was impossible when Olivia was everywhere, serving breakfast in the morning, hanging laundry in the afternoon, sitting on the porch in the evening with her mending. She had a way of drawing people to her, and the ranch hands were no exception. They told her their stories, sought her advice, made excuses to linger near the house. Owen watched from afar, telling himself he was glad she had found a place here, that she was settling in and would be fine without him. But jealousy burned in his gut every time one of the younger cowboys made her laugh, and protectiveness surged whenever anyone looked at her too long. He was losing his mind, and he knew it. Catherine noticed, of course. She cornered him one afternoon while he was fixing the corral fence. That Ruth girl is sweet on you, she said without preamble. Owen nearly dropped his hammer. She is grateful, that is all. I have been a woman for 49 years, Owen. I know the difference between gratitude and interest. Catherine leaned against the fence post, studying him, and unless I miss my guess, you are sweet on her too. I am not looking for. For what connection, love? A reason to stay in one place. Catherine's voice was sharp. You are 25 years old, Owen, young, strong, with your whole life ahead of you. You cannot run forever. I am not running. Then what do you call it? You have worked for me for 3 months, and I know for a fact you are planning to leave at the end of summer. You never stay anywhere longer than a season. That is running. Owen drove a nail into the wood with more force than necessary. Maybe I just like to see new places. And maybe you are scared, Catherine's voice softened. I lost my husband to a stampede 5 years ago. I know what grief can do, how it can make you want to close yourself off from ever feeling that kind of pain again. But Owen, if I had known the heartache that was coming, I still would have married him. The years we had together were worth every tear I shed when he died. With respect, Catherine, you do not understand. I understand that you saved that girl from a fire, even though fire clearly terrifies you. I understand that you have barely slept since she got here because you are too busy making sure the ranch is secure, that there are no dangers, that she is safe. I understand that you are falling in love with her whether you want to or not. Owen opened his mouth to deny it, but the words would not come. Because Catherine was right, somewhere between pulling Olivia from that burning building and watching her smile over breakfast, somewhere between her gentle questions and her refusal to let him hide, Owen had started to fall. And it terrified him more than any fire ever could. That evening, Catherine sent Owen to help Olivia hang lanterns on the front porch. A traveling preacher was coming through the next day, and Catherine wanted to host a social gathering for the neighboring ranches. Owen approached the house reluctantly, tools in hand, to find Olivia standing on a chair trying to reach one of the hooks. Her blonde hair had come loose from its pins, falling in waves down her back, and the evening light caught in it like spun gold. "Let me," he said, and she jumped, nearly losing her balance. Owen's hands shot out, steadying her waist, and Olivia looked down at him with startled eyes. They stayed frozen like that for a long moment, her standing on the chair, his hands on her waist, the world narrowing to just the two of them. "I have got you," Owen said quietly, and Olivia's face softened into a smile. "I know you do." She climbed down, and Owen took over hanging the lanterns, while Olivia held the ladder. They worked in comfortable silence, and Owen found himself relaxing, the familiar anxiety he felt around her easing into something warmer. "Tell me about your family," Olivia said after a while, "before the fire." Owen's hands stilled. He never talked about his parents, about the life he had lost. But Olivia was looking up at him with such open interest, such genuine care, that he found the words coming. "My father was a rancher, not a big spread, just enough cattle to get by. My mother grew vegetables and kept chickens. We had a small house, 2 rooms, but it was home." He climbed down the ladder, his throat tight. They loved each other. You could see it in the way they looked at each other, the way my father would kiss her forehead every morning before heading out to work. I used to think love like that was just for lucky people, that maybe I would find it someday too. "What changed your mind?" Watching it all burn, Owen met her eyes. "Love did not save them, Olivia. It did not make their death any less terrible. If anything, it made it worse because they died knowing they were losing each other." Olivia was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Then she said, "My mother told me once that love is not about avoiding pain. It is about having someone to share the pain with, so you do not have to bear it alone. Yes, my parents died, and yes, it hurt more because I loved them so much. But I would not trade a single memory with them for a life where I never felt that kind of love." "You are braver than I am," Owen said roughly. "No." Olivia stepped closer, so close he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "I just think maybe I have not been hurt as deeply as you have. Not yet anyway, but Owen, I refuse to live in fear of someday. The frontier is too harsh, life is too short. If I have learned anything from losing my parents, it is that we have to grab happiness where we can find it." "And what if it burns you?" The question came out hoarse. "What if you let yourself care and it all falls apart?" "Then at least I will have been warm for a while." She reached up and touched his cheek, her palms soft against his stubbled jaw. "You are so afraid of the fire, Owen, but maybe you need to learn that not all fires destroy. Some of them forge something stronger." Before Owen could respond, before he could pull away or lean in, or do any of the 1,000 things his heart and mind were warring over, there was a shout from the direction of the road. A rider was approaching fast, and even in the fading light, Owen could see the horse was lathered and exhausted. Something was wrong. He stepped in front of Olivia instinctively, his hand moving to the gun at his hip, and the rider pulled up in a spray of dust. "Raiders," the man gasped. He was from the neighboring ranch, his face pale with fear. "A gang hit the Stephenson place 2 hours ago, burned the barn, stole their horses, roughed up the family. They are headed this way. Catherine's place is next. You need to get ready." Owen's blood turned to ice. Raiders, fire, the two things he feared most, converging on the place where Olivia stood vulnerable and unprotected. Catherine came running from the house, and within minutes the ranch had transformed into organized chaos. The hands grabbed weapons, secured the horses in the reinforced paddock, doused lanterns that could give away positions. Catherine sent Aunt Martha and Olivia into the cellar with instructions to stay there until the danger passed, but Olivia balked. "I can help, I can load rifles, I can." "You can stay safe," Owen said, his voice harder than he intended. The fear pumping through his veins made him almost cruel. "Get in the cellar." "No." Olivia's face fell, hurt flashing in her eyes, but she let Martha pull her toward the cellar door. At the last moment she looked back at Owen, her expression pleading. "Be careful," she said. Owen could not answer. He just turned away and took up his position near the main house, his rifle ready, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. The wait was agony. The moon rose, full and bright, turning the landscape into silver and shadow. Every rustle of wind, every distant sound set Owen's nerves jangling. Beside him, the other ranch hands were equally tense, their weapons trained on the approach road. Then, just after midnight, they came. There were 8 of them, riding hard, torches in hand. Owen recognized the formation. This was not a random raid. These men were organized, dangerous, the kind of outlaws who had perfected the art of terrorizing isolated ranches. "Hold your fire until they are in range," Catherine ordered from the house window. She held a rifle with comfortable familiarity. "We need to make every shot count." The raiders spread out as they approached, circling the property. One of them raised his torch toward the barn, and Owen's vision went red. Not again. He would not watch another building burn, would not let these men destroy what Catherine had built, would not let them get anywhere near the cellar where Olivia was hiding. He sighted down his rifle and fired. The shot echoed across the yard, and the raider with the torch fell from his horse with a scream. The torch fell into the dirt, sputtering out, and chaos erupted. The raiders returned fire, and Owen and the ranch hands answered in kind. Muzzle flashes lit up the night, bullets whined through the air, and through it all, Owen moved with cold precision. He had spent years running from violence, from connection, from anything that could hurt him. But now, with Olivia's life on the line, he found a strength he had not known he possessed. He was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for her, for the chance that maybe, just maybe, she was right about warmth being worth the risk of burning. The battle lasted 20 minutes but felt like hours. When it was over, 3 raiders were dead, 2 were wounded and fleeing, and the rest had scattered into the night. The ranch hands gave chase, but Owen stayed behind, his eyes on the cellar door. Olivia emerged the moment Catherine gave the all-clear, her face pale in the moonlight. She ran straight to Owen, and he barely had time to set down his rifle before she was in his arms, her body shaking with relief and residual fear. "I heard the shooting," I thought. She could not finish the sentence, just held on to him as if he might disappear. Owen wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the scent of lavender, feeling the rapid beat of her heart against his chest. His own hands were shaking now, the adrenaline draining away and leaving exhaustion in its wake. "I am all right," he murmured into her hair. "You are all right, it is over." She pulled back just enough to look up at him, her eyes shining with tears. "You could have been killed." "So could you if they had gotten past us." Owen's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear. "Olivia, He did not know what he had been about to say, but it did not matter because Olivia rose up on her toes and kissed him. It was gentle, tentative, a question more than a demand, but Owen felt something inside him break wide open, the last of his resistance crumbling like ash. He kissed her back, his arms tightening around her, pouring into that kiss all the fear and relief and desperate longing he had been trying to deny. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Olivia smiled up at him with such joy that Owen felt his entire world shift on its axis. "I am falling in love with you," she whispered. "I know it is fast, I know you are scared, but I need you to know. Life is too short not to say it." Owen rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. Every instinct still screamed at him to run, to protect himself before this went any further. But louder than the fear was a new voice, one that sounded like hope, like possibility, like the future he had never let himself imagine. "I am scared," he admitted. "Terrified, but Olivia, I think I am falling in love with you too." Her smile could have lit up the entire Montana sky. The next morning brought new complications. The sheriff arrived from town with a grim expression and troubling news. The raiders who had attacked were part of a larger gang that had been terrorizing the territory for months. Their leader, a man named Jack Sutton, had a particular hatred for the Double Bar Ranch. "Why?" Catherine demanded. "I have never heard of this Sutton." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. He claims your late husband cheated him in a land deal 15 years ago, lost him a fortune, or so he says. He has been planning this revenge for a long time. That is ridiculous, Catherine said. My husband was an honest man. Does not matter if it is true or not. Sutton believes it, and he is not going to stop until this ranch is destroyed. The sheriff turned to Owen and the other hands. You boys fought well last night, but you got lucky. Sutton has at least 20 men. When he comes back, and he will come back, you will be outnumbered. Owen felt his newfound hope begin to crumble. If the ranch was not safe, Olivia was not safe, and he could not protect her from 20 armed men, no matter how much he wanted to. That afternoon, he found her in the garden behind the house, kneeling among the vegetable plants. She looked up when he approached, her face lighting up in a way that made his heart ache. I was hoping you would find me, she said. I wanted to. You need to leave, Owen interrupted. You and Martha. Go back east, somewhere safe. Olivia's smile faded. What? This ranch is not safe. Those raiders are coming back, and next time we might not be so lucky. I cannot protect you if you stay. She stood brushing dirt from her borrowed dress. I am not leaving. Olivia. No, her voice was firm. I am not running away. This is my home now. These people took us in when we had nothing. I am not abandoning them just because things got dangerous. It is not about abandoning anyone. It is about staying alive. Owen grabbed her shoulders, desperate to make her understand. If something happened to you, if you got hurt because I was not strong enough or fast enough, then that would be my choice to make, Olivia said quietly. Not yours, Owen. You do not get to decide what risks I take with my own life. You do not understand. No, you do not understand. She pulled away from him, her eyes flashing. I spent my whole life in Philadelphia being safe, being protected, never taking chances. And you know what? My parents still died. Safety is an illusion, Owen. The only thing that is real is what we choose to do with the time we have. So you choose to stay here and possibly die. I choose to stay here and live, she corrected. With you if you will let me, fighting for something I believe in, for people I care about. That is not foolishness, Owen, that is courage. Owen stared at her, this woman who had walked through fire and come out still believing in hope, still choosing connection over safety. She was everything he was not, brave where he was cowardly, open where he was closed, full of light where he carried only shadows, and he loved her. God help him, he loved her so much it felt like his chest was breaking open. I do not deserve you, he said hoarsely. That is not your decision either. Olivia stepped close again, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. Owen, I know you are scared. I know you think loving me means losing me eventually, that opening your heart just means it will get broken. But what if it does not? What if we get years together, decades? What if we build something beautiful and strong, and yes, maybe it ends someday, but we have all that time in between? And if it ends in fire, the question came out broken. If I have to watch you, then you will survive it because you are stronger than you think. Her hand moved up to cup his face. But Owen, you are already burning. Loneliness is its own kind of fire, and it is consuming you from the inside out. Let me help put it out. Let me love you. Owen closed his eyes, every defense he had constructed crumbling to dust. She was right. He had been burning for years, not in flame, but in isolation, in fear, in the desperate attempt to protect himself from pain by refusing to feel anything at all. And he was so tired of it. Tired of running, tired of being alone, tired of watching life happen from a distance. I do not know how to do this, he whispered, how to be what you need. Just be you, Olivia kissed him softly. Be the man who runs into burning buildings. Be the man who protects people he barely knows. Be the man I fell in love with. Owen kissed her back, harder this time, with all the desperation and longing and terrifying hope he felt. When they broke apart, he made a decision, one that felt like jumping off a cliff, like facing down the fire instead of running. All right, he said, I will try. But Olivia, if this gang comes back, if it gets bad, promise me you will get to safety. Promise me you will run if I tell you to. I promise to make the smartest choice I can in the moment, she said. That is the best I can offer. It was not enough, but Owen knew he would not get more. So he just held her close and prayed that his newly discovered courage would be enough to keep her safe. The attack came 3 days later, at dawn. Owen was already awake when he heard the thunder of hooves. He grabbed his rifle and raced outside, shouting the alarm. The ranch hands poured out of the bunkhouse, weapons in hand, but they were not ready, not for the sheer number of riders that burst onto the property. 20 men, maybe more, all armed and carrying torches. They spread out like locusts, and Owen's worst nightmare unfolded before his eyes. The barn went up first, flames racing up the dry wood with terrifying speed, then the bunkhouse. The raiders were systematic, efficient, clearly intending to burn everything to the ground. Owen fired at the nearest rider, but there were too many of them. A bullet whined past his ear, and he dove behind a water trough, his heart hammering. Around him, the other hands were fighting desperately, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Then Owen saw him, a man with a scarred face and cold eyes, sitting on a black horse at the edge of the chaos. He was not fighting, just watching with satisfaction as the double bar burned. Jack Sutton. Owen took aim, but before he could fire, there was a scream from the house. His blood turned to ice because he recognized that voice. Olivia. He abandoned his position and sprinted toward the house, where smoke was already pouring from the windows. 2 raiders had broken inside, and through the smoke, Owen could see Olivia struggling with one of them while Martha swung a cast-iron pan at the other. Owen crashed through the door, his rifle coming up. He shot the man attacking Martha first, then turned his weapon on the one holding Olivia, but the raider was using her as a shield, and Owen could not get a clear shot. "Drop the gun, cowboy," the raider snarled. "Or I will snap her pretty little neck." Owen met Olivia's eyes across the smoky room. She was terrified but trying to hide it, and the trust he saw there nearly broke him. She believed he would save her. She had faith in him, even when he had so little in himself. "Let her go," Owen said, keeping his voice steady. "Your fight is not with her." "My fight is with everyone on this ranch." The raider started backing toward the door, dragging Olivia with him. "Sutton wants it all destroyed, and that includes anyone foolish enough to defend it." The smoke was getting thicker, and Owen could hear the fire spreading to the roof. They had minutes at most before the house became a death trap. He needed to act, but if he made the wrong move, Olivia died. Then Martha, brave, foolish Martha, swung her pan at the raider's head. He ducked, and his grip on Olivia loosened just enough. Olivia stomped on his foot and elbowed him in the ribs, and Owen took the shot. The raider fell, and Owen grabbed Olivia, pulling her toward the door. "We have to go now." They ran, with Martha close behind. Owen practically threw them off the porch as the roof groaned ominously. They tumbled into the dirt just as a section of the house collapsed inward, sending up a shower of sparks. Olivia was coughing, covered in soot, but alive. Owen checked her quickly for injuries, his hands shaking, and found nothing serious. Relief flooded him so intensely he felt dizzy. Around them, the battle was turning. The sheriff had arrived with a posse from town, and the raiders were outnumbered now. Owen saw Sutton trying to escape and raised his rifle, but someone else got there first. The outlaw leader fell from his horse, and suddenly the remaining raiders were surrendering or fleeing. It was over. The aftermath was brutal. The barn was gone, the bunkhouse destroyed, and the main house had sustained serious damage. Catherine stood in the ruins of her home with tears streaming down her face, but when Owen approached to offer condolences, she just shook her head. "Buildings can be rebuilt," she said. "Everyone survived. That is what matters." Owen looked at Olivia, who was helping Martha bandage one of the ranch hand's minor wounds, and understood what Catherine meant. The things that truly mattered were not made of wood and nails. They were made of flesh and blood and beating hearts. That evening, with the fires finally extinguished and the danger past, Owen found Olivia sitting by the creek that ran through the property. She had washed the soot from her face and changed into a clean dress, and she looked exhausted but unbroken. "May I join you?" he asked. She smiled and patted the ground beside her. Owen sat close enough that their shoulders touched, and for a long moment they just watched the water flow past. "Thank you for saving me," Olivia said finally. "Again. I am just glad you are all right." Owen took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Olivia, when I saw that raider holding you, when I thought I might lose you." "But you did not," she squeezed his hand. "We are both here, we survived." "I have something I need to tell you." Owen turned to face her, his heart pounding. "Something I should have told you days ago, but I was too afraid. I love you, Olivia. I am completely, terrifyingly in love with you. And I know we have only known each other a few weeks. I know this is fast and probably foolish, but I do not care anymore. Life is too short, like you said, and I do not want to waste another day of it being afraid." Olivia's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. I love you too, Owen. I think I have loved you since you pulled me through that window, since you looked at me like I was something precious worth risking everything for. You are, Owen cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. You are worth everything, Olivia. And I know I do not have much to offer. I am just a cowboy, no land, no. You have you, Olivia interrupted. That is all I need, just you, Owen, your heart, your courage, your love. Owen kissed her then, pouring into it all the love and hope and terrified joy he felt. When they broke apart, he knew what he had to do, what he wanted to do more than anything in his life. Marry me, he said. I know it is fast, I know we should probably wait, but Olivia, I am done waiting. I am done running. I want to build a life with you, a home, a future. Marry me. Olivia laughed, a sound of pure happiness. Yes. Yes, Owen, I will marry you, today, tomorrow, whenever you want. The traveling preacher is still in the area, Owen said, suddenly urgent. We could do it tomorrow if Catherine would let us use what is left of the house. Tomorrow sounds perfect. They sat by the creek until the stars came out, making plans, dreaming together, two people who had both walked through fire and found each other on the other side. The wedding took place 2 days later, in the yard of the Double Bar Ranch with the whole community in attendance. Olivia wore a simple white dress that one of the neighboring ranch women had lent her, and Owen wore his best shirt with his hat in his hands. Catherine stood witness, smiling through happy tears, and Aunt Martha sobbed openly throughout the ceremony. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed Olivia with the sun setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It should have reminded him of fire, of destruction, of all the reasons he had spent years running from connection. Instead, it just looked like promise. That night, Catherine gave them the use of the guest cottage, one of the few buildings that had survived the raid largely intact. Owen carried Olivia over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently on the other side. Hello, Mr. Zachariah, she said, her eyes sparkling. Hello, Mrs. Zachariah. Owen still could not quite believe it. This woman, this beautiful, brave woman, was his wife, his partner, his home. They came together slowly, reverently, two people who had nearly lost everything discovering that they had gained the whole world. Owen was gentle with her, pouring into every touch all the love he had been too afraid to feel, and Olivia responded with a passion that left him breathless. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his hands stroking her golden hair. Tell me your dreams, Olivia murmured. The ones you have been too afraid to dream. Owen was quiet for a moment, letting himself imagine the future for the first time in years. I want land of our own, not a big spread, just enough for some cattle and horses. A house we build together, maybe children someday if you want them. I want them, Olivia said softly. I want a whole life with you, Owen, all of it, the hard parts and the beautiful parts and everything in between. Even if it means staying here. On the frontier, where things are hard and dangerous and uncertain. Especially then, she propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. The frontier is where people go to become who they are meant to be. It strips away everything false and leaves only the truth, and the truth is that we belong together, we are stronger together. Whatever comes, we will face it side by side. Owen pulled her down for a kiss, his heart so full he thought it might burst. He had spent a decade believing he was meant to be alone. That connection was too dangerous. That love was a fool's game played by those who did not know any better. But Olivia had proven him wrong. She had walked into his life through smoke and flame, and shown him that the fire he feared was not the one that destroyed, it was the one that lit the way home. The next months passed in a blur of rebuilding. Catherine, with insurance money and help from the community, began reconstructing the ranch. Owen worked harder than he ever had, but now it was not to earn enough to move on. It was to save money for the future he and Olivia were building together. By autumn, they had enough saved for a down payment on a small parcel of land adjacent to the Double Bar. It was beautiful, rolling grassland with a creek running through it, backed by mountains that turned purple in the evening light. Owen and Olivia rode out to survey their new property, and Owen felt something he had not experienced in over a decade, the desire to put down roots. We will build the house there, he said, pointing to a slight rise that would give them a view of the valley, and the barn just beyond, near the creek for water. And a garden, Olivia added, her eyes bright with excitement. And maybe a chicken coop, and eventually, if we are blessed, a bigger house when children come. Children, Owen had not let himself think about children in years, had not dared to imagine bringing life into a world that could take it away so cruelly. But looking at Olivia, her hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach, her face full of hope, he found himself wanting it. Wanting the family they could build, the legacy of love they could leave. "Are you?" he asked, hardly daring to hope. "I think so." Olivia turned to him, tears in her eyes. "It is early yet, but Owen, I think we are going to have a baby." Owen swept her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed. A baby, his and Olivia's child. The future he had been too broken to dream was becoming real, one day at a time, because one brave woman had refused to let him hide in his fear. By winter, their house was framed. By spring, it had walls and a roof. Owen worked through the cold months with the help of neighbors, and when the first warm days of April arrived, he and Olivia moved into their new home. It was small, just 3 rooms to start, but it was theirs. Olivia hung curtains she had sewn herself in the windows and arranged the simple furniture they had built and bought. Owen installed a large stone fireplace, determined that his home would have a hearth that brought warmth and comfort rather than fear. The first night in their new house, they sat by the fire and Owen felt peace settle over him like a blanket. Olivia was knitting tiny socks for the baby that would arrive in 3 months, and the sight of her there, safe, content, filled him with an emotion so powerful he could hardly breathe. "What are you thinking?" she asked, looking up from her work. "That I was wrong," Owen said, "about everything, about fire, about love, about what it means to be safe." "What do you think now?" "I think safety is not about avoiding pain or loss. It is about having someone to face those things with. I think fire can destroy, but it can also forge something stronger, and I think love is not a weakness. It is the only thing that makes any of this worth it." Olivia set down her knitting and came to sit beside him, his arm going around her automatically. "You have changed so much since that morning at the boarding house." "You changed me," Owen kissed her hair. "You refused to let me hide. You showed me that being vulnerable is not the same as being weak, that opening your heart is the bravest thing a person can do." "We changed each other," Olivia corrected. "You showed me that I could survive anything if I was brave enough to reach for what I wanted, that the frontier is not a place of fear, it is a place of possibility." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire dance in the hearth, and Owen marveled at how far he had come. A year ago he had been a man running from his past, convinced he was meant to be alone. Now he was a husband, soon to be a father, with land and a home and a future that stretched out before him full of promise. Their daughter was born on a warm July evening, with Aunt Martha and Catherine in attendance. Owen paced outside until he heard the baby's first cry, and then he was allowed in to find Olivia exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle with a shock of blonde hair. "Meet your daughter," Olivia said, her voice hoarse but happy. Owen took the baby carefully, terrified he would break her, but she just yawned and settled against his chest as if she had been waiting for him all along. Looking down at her small, perfect face, Owen felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. This was his child, his and Olivia's. A new life born from the ashes of their old pain, proof that love could create as well as survive. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I am your father, and I promise I am going to spend every day of my life making sure you know you are loved and safe and precious." "What should we name her?" Olivia asked. Owen thought for a moment, then said, "Hope. I want to name her Hope." Olivia smiled through tears. "Hope Zachariah, it is perfect." As Owen sat beside his wife, holding their daughter, he thought back to that spring morning when he had ridden into Thornton Creek, planning to collect supplies and move on. He had been so certain he knew what he needed: solitude, safety, distance from anything that could hurt him. But he had been wrong. What he had needed was exactly what he had found: a woman brave enough to love him despite his fear, strong enough to show him that vulnerability was not weakness, wise enough to understand that the frontier was not just a place of danger but of opportunity. Olivia had saved him just as surely as he had saved her from those flames, and together they had built something that could withstand any fire, a love that burned bright and warm, lighting their way into a future neither of them had dared to imagine alone. The years that followed were not always easy. The frontier never was. There were droughts and harsh winters, cattle that died and crops that failed. There were nights when Owen still woke from nightmares of fire, still felt that old fear trying to claw its way back. But every time Olivia was there, her hand in his, her voice gentle and sure, reminding him that they were stronger together than apart. They had 2 more children, a son named Thomas who had Owen's blue eyes and serious nature, and another daughter named Catherine after the woman who had given them their start. The house was expanded to accommodate their growing family, and the ranch prospered. Owen proved to have his father's skill with cattle, and Olivia eventually opened the dress shop she had dreamed of in Thornton Creek, riding into town twice a week to work. On their 5th anniversary, Owen took Olivia back to the creek where he had proposed. It was autumn again, the leaves turning gold and crimson, and their 3 children were spending the evening with Aunt Martha and Catherine. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Owen asked, holding Olivia close. "About not all fires destroying, about some of them forging something stronger." "I remember," Olivia smiled up at him. "Do you believe it now?" "I do," Owen kissed her softly. "You were right about everything, Olivia, about courage, about love, about what it means to really live. I spent so many years running from fire that I forgot it could also mean warmth, light, home." "You taught me that." "You taught me some things too," Olivia said. "You showed me that strength is not just about staying open, it is also about fighting for what matters. You proved that the strongest love is the one that pushes through fear and chooses hope anyway." They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of flame, and Owen felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for the fire that had brought them together, for the courage that had kept them together, for the love that had transformed them both. He had saved her from the flames that first day, pulling her from a burning building into the uncertain morning. But their hearts had ignited something far more powerful, a fire of love that would burn steady and true for all their days, lighting their way through whatever trials the frontier brought. And Owen knew with absolute certainty that he would never run again. He had finally found what he had been searching for all along, even when he did not know he was searching. He had found home not in a place, but in the woman beside him, in the family they had built, in the love that had proven stronger than fear. The fire had not destroyed him. It had forged him into someone new, someone brave enough to love, strong enough to stay, wise enough to know that the greatest risk was not in opening your heart, but in keeping it closed. And as the stars came out above their land, Owen Zachariah held his wife close and gave thanks for the flames that had brought them together and the love that would keep them warm forever.